Hi, everyone. This is Mike with episode 61 of Getting Everyone Moving, brought to you by Palms to Pines Parasports. And today we have Lisa Elliston. Hey, Lisa.
Well, hello, Michael. How are you?
Good. Nice to see you.
Great to see you.
All right. So tell us, now you are the president of the NWBA Juniors, but how did you get involved in adaptive sports?
Well, let's see. I have a son who's now 20, but when he was 5 years old, he was born with a congenital bone disease called polystotic fibrous dysplasia, which is a big long term. It's a rare bone disease. And what it is the bones aren't hard. They're soft, but it's not like the brittle bone disease.
Okay.
So obviously, over time, the weight of his own body would break his femurs. So we didn't find this out until 5 years old, when the second day of kindergarten, he fell off of a jungle gym and broke his hip. So at that time, that's when we found out at Vanderbilt Children's Hospital. We were in Nashville, Tennessee at that time. And so over the next 5 years, every 6 months, he would seem to break, because you can't keep a little boy down. So he's going to try to keep up. And he has an older brother, so he was trying to keep up with his older brother. So every 6 months we would be in surgery to put the nails in to hold his femurs together, and then a hip spica cast, which I don't know if you're familiar with those, but they're just awful. It's a cast that goes from about their chest down the one leg, and the other leg is open. So, and you're there for 6 weeks in that kind of a cast. So that was pretty trying. Obviously I couldn't work, so I was taking care of him that whole time. So he had, from 5 years old to 10 years old, probably about a surgery every 6 months, because it just kept breaking. It would either be the right leg or the left leg. So fast forward to about 7 years old, I didn't have a wheelchair for him yet because I didn't know how to go about getting one for my son. So we had a transport chair, and I went to the local car wash with him and got him out. And the owner of the car wash came over to me and said, "What sports does he play?" Which took me aback, and I felt very indignant, because I'm going, "Can't you see that my son is in a wheelchair?" And he said, no. He says, "My son has cerebral palsy and plays wheelchair basketball." And I said, "I had no idea." So he eventually got his wife on the phone, and she talked to me about this team in Nashville called Music City Thunder and their nonprofit, Able Youth Sports, and said, "You ought to check it out." Which was great, because I mean, he needed something. His older brother was playing soccer, so he needed something. So we went one Saturday to Super Sports Saturday and in Franklin, and that was the bug. So we weren't sure that his bones could take that kind of pressure. Our first tournament we saw with varsity kids, my husband and I about had a heart attack and said, "There's no way." No way he's going to play this. But when we saw the prep kids play at his own age, they're a little slower, not as aggressive at times. We went ahead and put him on the team, and he just has thrived since then. So that's how we got started. And then since then we moved to my husband's had a job transfer in Mississippi. And so I was looking for something for him, because at that time, Jonathan was 12, 13. That's a pretty critical age, as you know, for kids that age, to find something for him. And apparently there was one time a juniors team up in Memphis, but we were 3 hours south. So I contacted the local adult team, and they had some extra chairs, and they didn't have a youth team. They said they tried it once, it didn't work. Well, I'm a doer. So you just give me that challenge and mama's going to take off. So we went ahead and we got 5 kids. We moved in April. We got 5 kids, including my son, at the beginning of that season. And we're able to have our very first season as a prep team. And we named it the Mississippi Wheelcats. And that nonprofit helped us that first year. And during that first year also, I learned how to get our own nonprofit, a 501c3, as you're very familiar with. And I'm just a mom, so I didn't know how to go about doing that, but I learned, and we started the My Wheels, which is Mississippi Youth Wheelchair League, back in 2014. So that second season, we were able to have our own team. We grew from 5 kids to 15 kids in 1 year, which was incredible. Oh. And they didn't know how to play basketball, wheelchair basketball. So Jonathan got to be not only a player, but a mentor. And I think that really fired his rocket. And then just 5 years ago, when Jonathan was going to be a junior in high school, we moved to Dallas, Texas, and found a juniors team here. So he's had the unique opportunity to play with 3 different programs. And what's nice as a mom is now I got to be a mom. I still run our nonprofit afar, but I've got some great local folks that are in Mississippi that do the busy work. So I just helped do the board meetings and things like that. But it's nice to actually be a parent when we moved to the Dallas area and got to be a parent and enjoy our son's final junior career in wheelchair basketball.
So you, I mean, as you said, you're a doer and you've helped to create opportunities along with your son to play. But what more, there are pockets in the country where there isn't much. And so how do we encourage, how do we create more of those opportunities so that, any child with any type of disability and adults are able to participate?
I know that's a very good question. I did have a parent, or actually a grandparent, reach out to me last year because her grandchild had come up there in Louisiana, because there's nothing in Louisiana that they could find because they're down South Louisiana.
Yeah.
So I just kind of gave her some hints and told her what I did, and she's taken it. And now all of a sudden, now we've got the Louisiana Cajun Wheelers. Yep, this is their very first season as a prep team.
Yeah.
So it's just somebody who I don't know. That's such a good question, because we know that there are kids out there
Yeah.
that are sitting there doing video games because they don't know what else to do.
Yeah.
And as your mantra is, we got to get people up and moving. We just do. It's for their physical health, their mental health, social, everything is taught just by being part of wheelchair basketball or any wheelchair sports. It can be wheelchair tennis, whatever for these kids. There is not enough. It takes somebody who really, really has the passion to either talk to, well, when I started, I talked to, as I'm sure you probably did, a lot of pediatric orthopedic offices. Granted, they can't tell me who their kids are, but I can give them a flyer and a card and say, please let the parents know that this is it. But yeah, that's kind of my little mission, I guess, in life is how do we get that? But you really have to have somebody local that wants to do it, as I think you found out too.
Yeah. So thank you. I want to move back to talking a little bit about your family and your son. Obviously, a lot of challenges. I mean, an operation every 6 months. I mean, what happened with Jonathan's schooling? What are some of those challenges that you had to overcome?
Well, I didn't know, everybody, because we were in a little town in Tennessee called Charlotte, Tennessee, which is 30 miles, I think, west of Nashville. That little school district didn't know when I registered him for kindergarten, they wanted to put him in special ed. And I'm thinking, no, he's not special ed. So I found out that there's a thing called Section 504. If you have a child with physical disabilities, if you have a Section 504, then you can kind of accommodate his needs in the classroom or in school. So that worked out well, because obviously he was walking still until you get all these surgeries. And then eventually by the 2nd grade, he had to he could go faster in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So he kind of gave up walking, and he was safer in the wheelchair because kids run around and go crazy and knock him over. And then here we are. But schooling was wonderful. They did homeschooling. So I had talked to the principal, and of course we have a meeting, and then they go over the 504, and then they would come to the house and school him 2 to 3 days a week. So unfortunately, the child probably doesn't write very well because when they learn how to print, he was laying down in this hip spica cast on the floor. So he's doesn't write or print very well, but he at least can. So, but yeah, that was, I think the first year Jonathan ever got to go to school for the whole year was 5th grade.
Right. Yeah.
So, yeah. So, and that was tough on the kids. I would take him because we would have to borrow or rent or whatever the pediatric wheelchair, which it reclines because that's the only way he could get around.
Yeah.
So when he was feeling up to it, while he's in the cast, we would go back, especially in kindergarten, because the kids didn't understand why their friend wasn't in school.
Yeah.
So we would take him and visit. We would talk to the teacher and visit with them. And the teachers were great over the years. They would have all the kids sign a little get well card and bring it with his homeschool teacher the next day. But he really didn't get to have that opportunity of making those close friends.
Yeah.
But it's funny how since Facebook came on, I didn't allow him to be on social media till he was 18. So, but once he got on social media, it's funny how he could reconnect with some of those kids he remembered from elementary school because he grew up with them when he could be there from kindergarten to 6th grade.
Yeah.
So that was kind of nice for him to be able to reconnect to some of those kids. So, but
what's Jonathan doing now? And what does he hope to do in the future?
well, we're in a state of flux at the moment because of COVID. We were very blessed that he was recruited to the University of Illinois his freshman year and played. But then when COVID hit, we brought him home. He didn't do so well on remote learning. Let's put it that way. He's definitely an in-person learner.
Yeah.
So, and then he's got still some challenges with some bone growth in his hips because you know how hard they play in college, how much they push forward.
Yeah.
Well, apparently he's got some pain there, and then we found out that there's this bone spur that he could have shaved, but that's another surgery. Yeah. So right now he's just kind of staying at home, and he is connecting with his friends. He's got some friends that he went to high school with in Mississippi. So when he's on his game, they use it to talk and communicate. So at least he's got that friendship. Yeah. But he does drive regularly, so he didn't have to have hand controls. So, but he hasn't done that in a year and a half. So we got to get him back out to relearn how to drive. And he's just in a state of flux. He's not sure he wants to go back to school, but I would like to encourage that. Either that or he's going to have to get a job.
Right.
So. Yeah, so he said he just doesn't want to work at a fast food, but maybe we have seen a couple of other folks in wheelchairs working at like Lowe's and or the sports stores. So that might interest him. So right now he's just eating mom's food and mom's doing the laundry for him. You know, I probably shouldn't, but
no. We want our children to be independent, right?
Exactly. So we look forward to once this pandemic is over but he certainly has had a lot of time to think about what he wants to do.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the NWBA and kind of where the junior division is heading. As president, obviously your leadership, where do you see the junior division kind of going as we get out of COVID?
Well, we've got a lot of things on the books that we're really trying to implement with the NWBA. And that is, as you know, for varsity, which is the high school age kids we have classification. So that's, you know, on what their abilities are and classify them just like the adult division does and collegiate division does. So we're trying to implement that. That I look forward to us doing. How to do that is very hard. We have 6 conferences. So my dream is to have one person in each conference that has gone through the official classification to become an official classifier. And then that way they can go around to those teams in that conference and make sure that the classification looks correct. Yeah. So that's a big project.
Big problem, yeah.
But after COVID, I really would like to try to be able to implement that and get that on a roll. And I think everybody else is too. The collegiate division is, because that's how they recruit these kids. They're trying to find those lower classifications that they can recruit for kids that want to go to college. So that's good. I would love to see more junior teams. I mean, that's kind of my heart, as you know. Yeah. So I guess it would be great if I was, you know, real wealthy and could go live in an area for 6 months to try to get it started. But hopefully, as the word gets out and more people are in tune to what we have to offer for kids, that maybe somebody will step up and reach out to us, because we certainly have a little plan of how to start a team. They just have to reach out and help them out.
And you've had that experience. Well, I think it comes down to, maybe an earlier question that I asked is, how do we create a lot more awareness, in the United States? I mean, what are some of the things that, that we can do or that we should be doing in order to do that?
Well, that's a great question. It's amazing how it's wonderful that NBC or one of these networks are finally showing the Paralympics.
Yeah.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Last year or year before, whenever it was, that of 2016, how people were very much aware of that, and
Yeah.
they weren't.
Yeah.
So that I think helps on a national level.
Yeah.
I think locally, there's a lot of teams that are on social media, and I think that has opened the door for a lot. I'll tell you, it has helped us in Mississippi be able to get sponsors because of social media,
Yeah.
which is amazing, because they didn't realize that. People just don't understand. They're getting there, but they don't understand there's a difference between a physical disability and a mental disability.
Yeah.
I mean, when they think of something for your kid, which people were telling me about Jonathan, oh, you can get him in Miracle Ball, and that's great, but that's not where he fit in.
Yeah.
He wanted to find kids that were like him, that were just physically disabled, but were in school. In high school, it's amazing. In his high school, there's 4,000 kids in this high school that he graduated from here in Texas, big schools. He was the only one in a wheelchair that was not in the special education hall, going up and down the halls constantly, and I would always tell him how, his sight is where everybody's rear end is. Yeah. So but it's amazing how everybody knew his name. And I said, well, who's that? Oh, I don't know, Mom. I think he's some kid in my class, in my science class or whatever. Yeah. So, and then he was also had the opportunity in Texas. They have a wheelchair league for track and field. So he actually got to go and represent his high school in track. They actually had a wheelchair made for him. It's a special sports chair. I don't know if you've seen the ones for racing, but it's pretty cool. So he was in the 100 meter and the 400 meter, and actually got to state. He was the top 9 of the entire state of Texas, so he got to go to state representing his high school. And all the kids in that school, it really opened their eyes that yes, there was a wheelchair sport, and this kid in this wheelchair is just like I am. It's just he uses wheels instead of legs.
Yeah.
So,
yeah,
but I mean, that's something else that one of our folks who used to be Chris Rathje, who used to be the junior president before myself, his passion is to get more high school sports such that are wheelchair oriented, whether it's basketball or track. So I look forward to more states doing that. I think that would help.
Yeah. Well, Challenge Athletes Foundation is really trying to do more with, I mean, it's going to be virtual now, but I know that, they want to do more and promote more in high schools, which I think is important, because you want, for an able-bodied youth, there's so many opportunities, and, for youth with a physical disability, not as many. So I think.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And they always want to put, like when they found out he played wheelchair basketball at high school, they wanted him to be the manager of the basketball team. Well, that's not what he wants to do.
Right.
He wants to play.
Right.
So it's funny how people think they're helping by offering those opportunities. And for some children, that might be fine because you're one of the guys, right? You're part of a team. But for him, nah, he just wanted to play.
Yeah.
He wanted to get up and move.
Like anyone else.
Right. Right.
So I know there's a committee now, juniors and collegiate college coaches are participating. mean, how do you see us getting more collegiate level adaptive sports? I mean, throughout the country. So, there is a program in every state. What do we have to do?
Mhm. Well, I think the collegiate division is doing a great job. I don't know how they're doing because that's their
Yeah.
their uh, their job, but they've gotten some other colleges that are starting collegiate sports in Washington State. I believe that's
Yeah.
new this last, yeah, isn't it? You probably know more than I do because when we first looked at collegiate, when Jonathan was young, there was only
Yeah.
11, and
11.
I don't know how many there are now, but
Yeah.
I mean, it seems like at every turn they're because
Yeah.
they're finding out, honestly, for the universities too, it's a nice little financial grants that they can go for that they
Right.
would have never gone for before if they would have adaptive sports.
Right.
So, it can be advantageous for them
Yeah.
financially to do something like that.
Yeah.
So,
So you've lived in a few different parts of the country. And so you've seen, different barriers, different challenges. I mean, what are some of those, and how do we develop more inclusion in society?
that's a great question because especially in Mississippi being, such a small state, I was shocked how many restaurants and places that we would go to that were not ADA accessible for Jonathan.
Huh.
I was still to this day am shocked.
Huh.
So a lot of the adults, that live in Mississippi would go to the legislature and tell them that we've got to get this done.
Yeah.
And I just don't know if they don't see it, or because you know how that is. If you don't have that in your life,
Yeah. Yeah.
you don't realize how difficult and challenging it can be
Yeah.
for either a child, adult, or whatever. I guess a lot of that's going to have to be done legislatively, I would think.
Yeah.
But you've got to have the people who want to make change,
Mm.
and so I hope a lot of these adults can do that just in the different states, because I think if they're living there and they've been disabled for a period of time, they probably would be able to speak very clearly on how
Yeah.
it was before they were hurt and
Yeah.
after they were hurt,
Yeah.
and the differences that need to be taking place
Yeah.
in different places. But
So go ahead. Sorry.
oh, I was just going to say the same thing. I mean, it's amazing how if our kids with physical disabilities can just be infiltrated into the schools like Jonathan was, there it is.
Yeah.
Yeah. There it is. They can ask him, how can I help you? Or you got it? And there you go. It's amazing how kids can help each other.
But I think part of it is too, I mean, as you mentioned, it is about educating people such that, Jonathan, cognitively, there's
Right.
no issues. And so why would he be in a special kind of, needs class?
Right.
I think that's very important.
It is. It is. And I was going to say, unfortunately, I know that there's a lot of physical disabled kids who still need some learning help.
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
But I'm not sure. Well, it's interesting. I have a couple of kids I'm thinking of. I almost wish I would have asked the parents, are they in a different hallway from the school, or are they just go there for one class and then come back and are integrated?
Yeah.
I don't know. I wish I would have asked.
Yeah.
Oh, well.
So have you and your husband helped Jonathan, to be an advocate too, to advocate for himself, to advocate for others? Yeah.
Yes, because he has to learn to do that. I mean, obviously, when he was little, we were his advocate, and that's hard to step away from as a parent, because I've done it since he was 5 years old, and every year we have to come up, like absences. Okay, that was always my fight for him in school. He would travel with his team, right, in the NWBA to go to tournaments. Well, we have to take off Friday and Monday.
Right.
Well, at the end of the year, if you have too many absences, then you have to take the end of the year exams. If you don't have enough absences, then you don't have to take the exams.
Yeah.
Well, Jonathan Ethan didn't want to have to take the exams. He was doing very well in school.
Sure.
So that would be my fight every year, is what's the difference between him being off of school and your football team being out of school?
Hmm.
And so that would be my fight every year. And thankfully would always win, so they would definitely just let it go. But he has seen that, and he's had to learn. When he went to college, he had to advocate for himself a lot, which I thought was good. Coach Bushy was very much into saying, here's your classes. You can't have classes. This is the time that we work out. You're going to have to go and take care of that. So that, and he was very adamant. He wanted to drive with his legs. He didn't want to drive with hand controls. So we got him a place where he can lift his own chair, so he puts his own chair in the bed of the truck and gets himself into the driver's seat. And he really enjoyed driving to and from school and high school that last year. And got his own driver's license. I mean, there was a lot of those things he had to do. We can't do it all.
Yeah. So sport has really helped him to be independent and to do for himself.
Tremendously. And even when we started that Mississippi team, I think Dave and I are the kind of people that we never just focused just on Jonathan. Jonathan was just a player at that time, So Jonathan stepped up on his own, teaching these kids how to play the sport, where all these kids, my husband and I felt they're our babies, they're all ours. We all want all of them to be the best person they can be, and to learn and to be independent and all those things that we want our children to be. So, and what's great is to hear that now a child that we started with, who is so afraid of getting hit with his own chair, is now a senior this year with Mississippi Wildcats, and he's like the biggest defense player there is, bumping everybody. So those moments are the moments that just that we're going, this is why we do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is why.
So we're getting towards the end of our interview here. Are there some final words that you'd like to leave our people with?
Just get involved. Get involved. It doesn't take a lot. I mean, to be a volunteer at a local, if you have a local NWBA juniors team, it's amazing how much help an adult can do, and if you're a child that's looking for something, just try it. Don't be afraid to just get on the court and try. If you don't like it, you know what? There's probably something else we can find for you. There's tennis, there's bocce ball. There's so many other sports that we can get it. But if you see a child, ask them what sport they play. I mean, I was pretty upset when the guy asked me that, what sport does my child play? But it opened up the conversation. And that was brilliant. Yeah.
All right, Lisa, thank you so much. Really appreciate your time.
Oh, thank you, Michael, for what you do. We appreciate what you do in spreading the word. Thank you.